There we go.
Yeah, there we go, man.
All right. Howdy. Another subject this week that you don't personally, I'm guessing, don't personally suffer from.
Okay.
But I want to dive into a little bit. How much of society do you think in 2025, or at least let's just say from the pandemic to now, how much of society is living in a state of high alert?
Ooh, high alert meaning they're just on edge all the time.
Yeah,
like high alert with regards to what?
Societal things, their job security, just the general state of high alert.
I mean, honestly, I think it's probably how it always been, half and half. I think there's half the world that lives in high alert, half the world just kind of, they don't have a clue what's going on around them. They lack situational awareness. That's how I see it. I think there are people that they're overly alert. They're looking for someone to wrong them. They're suspicious of everybody.
That's kind of where I'm going.
But then there's the other half that are just like, they don't have a care in the world or a clue.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So I do think there's a lot of people, that probably at least 50% of society live that way.
Yeah,
from my vantage point.
Well, I so the reason I came across this is I was reading some old journal entries randomly this past week, and I intentionally went in with the idea of what was my state of mind in the 90s, the early 2000s, the late 2000s, the early 2010s, 12s, like taking it in like 5-year segments, except the 90s. I kind of only looked at the second half of the 90s when my writing started to become more as an adult, so to speak.
Okay.
And I can see in my own writing, even knowing that there was an age difference there, and life circumstances certainly were different from every 5-year span. I can see my own mental state changing, becoming more unfortunately at times I think living more in a state of high alert. And only since the pandemic have I been able to concentrate on that and wind it back.
Okay.
The pandemic,
why are you living in high alert, you think?
I don't know. I not being that's a very multifaceted question that could put you on the couch.
Sure.
Now, maybe some situational anxiety not dealt with correctly that bleeds into other parts of your life, the whole thing. But I just noticed that as my life became a little more complex, I probably wore more of my anxiety in my persona.
Okay.
I don't think it was a problem. I don't think it caused any career or other issues, but I can see it, feel it, read it. I can admit it. I can see the difference as life became more complex. I don't know if I dealt with it properly, and I just wonder because of the instant news and everything being thrown at us. How is society managing that now with the uber wealth of information, and now with AI, especially the past 3 to 4 years? Having to now worry about not only the volume of information, but now the manipulation of quote unquote reality within that information.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple pieces to this, right? So one, I think people that are on high alert lack some level of discipline or confidence in themselves. Because I look at, like, I don't really live in high alert, right? Maybe it's a downfall, maybe it's a blind spot I have, but I've always been confident enough where I feel like I can solve the problem. Like if something happens, I feel like I can solve. Now, obviously, if someone comes in with a weapon, that's a different story. But I'm saying, like, just life in general, like just problems in general. I've always felt like I've been disciplined enough and have trained myself enough where most things I face, I could solve, or I can find a way through it. So that's why I don't necessarily live on high alert. I think the people that, at least people I know, when I look at it, that have some level of over exaggerated or overstimulated alert, or have that anxiety, there's some level of grounding discipline that's missing. Because I believe if you have some sense of grounding in your life, like a philosophy, certain disciplines, you don't have as much anxiety. Like I look at people that are very disciplined, they're not really anxious people, because they always come back to that anchor. that thing that
the discipline is the anchor.
The discipline is the anchor. Like, so I know, like myself, I'm almost maniacally different. That's not the right word. I'm very like just manically disciplined sometimes. Like my mornings are the same every morning.
Right.
Like but that is an anchor for me. Like I know that centers me. If I get up and do these things, I am centered for the day. Or if at the end of the night I do these things, that centers me for the next day. So there are certain things I just do that are my anchors in life. And I think that's been able to help me, push off any anxiety I started to feel in any sense of the way.
Mm-hmm. That's what I meant. I gathered that from you. And I think stoicism has always been a good salve for that. When I started to feel anxious, stoicism was so grounding.
Yeah.
So you have to believe it. You gotta want to believe in the logic.
Of course. And you look at it like this. It's like, okay, I'm feeling anxious about what? Something that may or may not happen. So why am I giving my energy to something that may not happen? I'll give the energy to it when it happens. And that's kind of a principle that I've always, try and come back to. Now, do I have those moments where I'm just ready to lose my shit because I'm anticipating something? Absolutely. But when I find myself going too far overboard, I say, okay, well, look, take a step back. This hasn't happened yet. So why am I wasting energy on it? If it happens, I'll navigate through it then.
Right.
And that usually solves the problem because 99% of the time, the thing you're worried about doesn't happen.
Exactly right. And ultimately your ability and confidence level to deal with whatever comes. That's an emotional muscle you have to build over time.
100%. You got to face adversity enough to know you can do it.
Correct.
But if people don't put themselves in uncomfortable situations, then they'll never know whether they can handle it or not.
And that's where I'm going with it.
Okay.
And that's where my next part of the question was, do you think it's possible that the parenting style, just say the past 15 years, and what we're, coupled with society in general, how parenting and societal circumstances are meshing now? Do you think that, I know that we've talked about having, soft children today, but do you think that we might not be preparing our youth to stand up to adversity?
Yeah, I think that's a big problem. Absolutely.
And I think that might be contributing. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's people in their 80s and 90s and 50s and 60s dealing with anxiety. I'm not saying it's specific to younger people, but I do think that, if you're a parent and you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling that the technology and society and the employment circumstances and everything and things the violence on TV, the things that you're letting, the inputs you're letting come in, it's a choice.
Yeah, it is.
But the default for most people is to absorb what they're hearing and seeing.
Yeah.
If you don't manage that well, you're not going to have a good base to show your children how to manage that as well too. And you basically end up putting it on them. And I just wonder how much of our youth is moving around in 2025 wearing a lot of their parents' anxiety.
Well, I think it's that, and I think the youth have not been taught situational awareness. Like that is the biggest thing I noticed. That read the room is what I always say to people, especially when I've dealt in transactions with younger lawyers or younger parties involved, and they'll say something or do something. I'm like, man, you had no concept what was going on in the room. Like came out of left field with something that if you would have just picked your head up and looked around, you would have realized that you should have probably said the opposite of what you just said.
So why do you think that happens with the young?
There's an egocentricity to it, right? When you grow up being told you're the best at everything, you're the greatest, you can do no wrong, here's a trophy for whatever place you come in, it's a very egocentric viewpoint. I'm not trying to bash. I think it happens in all generations, but I've just noticed it more with the younger generation because that's when it was the participation trophies, right? I understand you want to encourage kids and give them rewards for, going out of their comfort zone and being a part of something. But unfortunately, that's not how the world works. When you go out into life, you don't get a trophy for just existing. You get a trophy for succeeding in life, right? The fittest, the best usually get the spoils. And if we're teaching our kids at a young age that you just get rewarded for showing up, yes, you get to play by showing up. You get to win by winning. And that's the piece we're missing. You know, we're teaching kids the showing up is winning.
Mm-hmm.
The showing up is just that
Is
you're
enough.
showing up.
Yeah.
And that's not enough. But
Yeah.
that's not enough. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like if you're in any profession, take the law aside, because I think the law has some nuance to it, but any profession, if you're a young professional, if you just go above and beyond, like go above and beyond, do what's asked, don't question, just move forward, learn, listen, keep your head down and observe. 3 years, you'll be a completely different person.
Mm-hmm.
But too many young professionals want to question everything, push back on everything, you know, have these, you know, well, I don't want to do that. These are my boundaries, right? And you got to have them. But I think the more disciplined you become, the more boundaries you automatically have by the disciplines you've built. If that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
I don't think people think about it that way, though. And it's just,
well, it's multifaceted. Is the cause of that? Well, the cause is multifaceted as well too. It's not exclusively parental permissiveness and parental bullshit.
Yeah,
but that's a huge part of it. But
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
ultimately these children were raised in a good economic time.
Sure,
they didn't feel any economic pain of let's say what we went through in the early 90s, the recession and so forth. They weren't humbled by the economy, at least not yet anyway.
Right. Yes.
And you add in a less social society.
Yeah.
Where we're consumed by our devices and more time has been spent in isolation as opposed to socialization. They become a little more inept in understanding socialization.
Well, and the thing with socialization too, like when you look at like being a kid, you got humbled all the time. You got picked on.
Part of life,
you got in fights. You know, things happened, and that was a humbling experience. So you learned a lot of life lessons trying to interact with different groups of people, different kids. Like I can remember just growing up, like you went out, you woke up in the summertime, you went outside, you came back when it was dark, just gone all day. You just figured out life. Parents had no idea where you were, right? I mean, there was no way to contact us. We'd get up in the morning, get on our bikes and go, and we'd show back up at dinner. Or show back up at the end of the night. Like that's, and you just learn.
Lights came on.
Yeah, but you learn resilience, right? You learn how to deal with different types of people.
Sure.
And you learned a lot of humbling lessons.
No question.
And
well, you learn to figure things out on your own too.
Yes. You couldn't call someone. You couldn't go on Google and like, how do I fix a flat tire? Or what do I do in this situation? You just learned. You figured it out. Like your chain breaks on your bike and you're on a bike trail 10 miles from home. You fucking figure it out. Like, or you're carrying your bike home. You're not calling mom or dad to come pick you up because you don't want to walk. Like, those are true stories. Those are things that happen, right? Mm-hmm. You know, you on a bike trail and your chain pops. Well, you look like you're carrying your bike home for 10 miles.
Do you ever sit and think? I know we talked about the before times and the after times. We've been there, but I often sit back and look at the current, like the Gen Z or what's after Gen Z now? Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
And I think about that generation a lot, and I try to place them in my childhood generation of the late 70s and the early 80s, and in society in that time frame.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really interesting that they're wired now so differently. There's a huge difference between the youth of Gen X and the youth of Gen Z.
Well, yeah. So here's the observation I make. Right, you have us, the Gen X. Then you have what millennials after us, right? Then you have the Gen Z. Then Gen Alpha. I think that's like Gabe's age, like the Generation Alpha. That's the generation I see that's more like us. It's almost like it's cycled back around. It's come full circle because they're like, we don't give a shit. Like, we're going to do what we want to do. Like, don't really give a shit.
And they're more experience-based, I think, too.
They're more experience-based, and they don't get offended very easily.
Right.
They'll just say whatever. They don't really give a shit. And I think it's because that generation was raised. So I think there's a portion of our generation, the that raised kids to be we were helicopter parents.
Oh,
I think
no
there's another
question.
portion of our generation that raised the Gen Alphas that were like, no, figure it out. Like, figure it out, you know. And I think that's it's coming back around. It's cycling back. I think the Generation Alpha is a little bit more like us, the way they see the world. Well, not everybody. Every generation has mixes of all types.
Certainly. That's why it's so hard to really to talk about this with any certainty.
Yes,
but we can talk in terms of probability.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. But I just think I see if it, you know, and I think Generation Alpha is, I think that's or I don't know what generation it is. I think it's Generation Alpha.
After Z.
Yeah, I think, but I can't remember when it starts.
Well, if that's truly happening, then that's a positive sign.
Yeah, because I think it's ours is up to like 1980 or 1979, and then 80 to 95 is millennials.
Yeah,
like 96 to 2000 something is Gen Z, and then Gen Alpha is kind of that younger generation. So like maybe it's even at the tail end of Gen Z. Yeah, is kind of, you know, kids that were born like in the early 2000s. I feel like are, you know, they're less offended by things. Yeah,
I would agree with that.
They're less politically correct. They'll just kind of, but they also have learned, I think, to navigate the world differently than others.
And when you look back on that, I really think that we are also, okay, so we talk about parenting, right? And how each generation parents their young.
Yeah.
But it's really that in a combination of where society fell economically. Okay. I think economic pressures, economic circumstances within those childhoods of those generations, also played a hand in their development.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure of that.
When you think about like my grandparents, my parents were the baby boomers, and then whatever their generation was called, but they lived through the Depression. And that's all you ever heard was, that's why they were so frugal and and so disciplined monetarily, generally speaking, and so forth. But you fast forward through the baby boomers and then the Gen Xers and then millennials, and you will see more and more frivolous behavior with money. But part of that reason, I think, is there was more money available as well, too.
Yeah.
Would you not agree?
Yeah. I mean, there's more money available, and money doesn't mean the same thing it used to, right? They have a credit card. The money's not real sometimes. Like, I just swipe this thing.
Bingo.
I don't have to, like, carrying cash is a different thing, right? Like,
that's teach you a lesson.
But that's why casinos give you chips. You don't bet cash. They give you chips, right? Because to put $1,000 in cash on the table for a bet is a lot different than putting two purple chips.
A million
you know,
%.
You put 2 chips, that's just 2 chips. But taking 10 $100 bills and putting on the table, that's a different feeling. That's tangible. You can feel the loss already by just putting the money on the table. That's that back then that they didn't have access to credit.
That's a very, very good point.
And now it's like, you don't think it's just it's not a thing.
Isn't it interesting? You get down to conspiratorial.
Yeah.
Is that part of the reason why society cash is supposedly there's a movement, it has been for a long time, to phase cash out of society?
Well, yeah, you keep people in debt, you keep people dependent on the system, right? I mean, if you keep people in debt, they're a constant slave. You know, they use credit cards and then they put themselves in debt. They don't really think about it because it's not really money out of their pocket. They just I got a bill, I got to pay it.
It's like an arrangement.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I buy more things, I pay. As long as I have a limit, I can just keep doing it. But then they got to keep working to pay the credit cards. You know, to me, freedom is not having any debt. I mean, that's the true freedom. Then we're not relying on anything. You're not beholden to anyone. Like that's the true freedom when you have that, because then you don't need that much money to live.
Right.
You know,
right.
Really, you don't.
Right. Yeah, and that's and the money component of it too is probably a significant part of why so many folks could be living in a state of high alert now too. The impending doom of not having enough or not being able to survive, and the irony of the whole thing is, I mean, it's a hell of a lot easier to survive today than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
You can make money. I mean, if you really needed to make $5,000 in 15 to 30 days, you spend a couple hours on the internet, you could do that easily. People just got to be able to put the time in and want to do it and are willing to do it, and then will actually apply what they learn. Now with AI, I mean, AI makes things so easy. You can literally have it create a business plan for you, create products for you, tell you how to market it, create a marketing plan. All you have to do is implement. It'll do the thinking for you.
Right.
You just have to implement it. And that's the gap that people just don't want to do the work.
But isn't that in a way scary?
That people aren't willing to do that? Well, yeah, no shit. Because it's the easy. That's just like, that is the hardest part, right? The execution. If you look at it from a pure tactical standpoint, right? Executing is hard. Thinking is easy. You know, but now the AI is doing the thinking for you, just telling you, hey, here we analyze everything. Here's the things you should do. Here's a step-by-step blueprint to make $1,000 in the next 7 days. Just do this. Then people don't do that. Man, and they complain about the situation they're in.
It frustrates me because I remember distinctly starting my own business at the beginning of the web, and there was no instruction manual, and I had to figure it out as I went. And it was like really exciting, but there were times it was really frustrating because there was no user manual. There was no, you had these big windfalls of success, and then you had these dry spells of like, because there was nothing to look at. There wasn't any of that. It came over time, slowly, but. And I look at it now, if there was AI, now again, the competition should be more fierce now because so many happy people have easier access to market. But
yeah, I agree with that. But I think you're right. Like, there is no manual to building a business, you know, and it's just, and it's hard to do, and people don't realize that. And it's, you know, so with the technology we have now, like, it's, if I would have had this AI 5 years ago when I started the firm, I'd probably be light years ahead of where I am right now. Light years, just from a marketing standpoint, because it helps create content. It helps create marketing ideas, right? But the more information you feed it, the better it knows you. And that's the crazy part about like AI. Like if you, we were at a conference last week. Jeff Hancher had his mastermind, and he had an AI guy come in, and he's an AI expert. He was talking. He says, right now, today, as of today, the IQ of AI is 150. Einstein was 170. By the end of this year, take a guess what the IQ of AI will be.
Close to 200.
1,000. 1,000. Think about that.
Now, so is that advanced knowledge, or is that error-free knowledge?
It reasons with itself now. AI, the new ChatGPT 01 model,
that's horrifying.
That reasons with itself. I watched it today. I put something in. I was looking at like some marketing idea, and I gave it some parameters, and it says, here's what it came back with. Okay, rethinking this, didn't like this response, coming up with more information. And it literally, because the first model of ChatGPT is you have a conversation with it.
Correct.
Ask it a question, answers. Another question, answers. This, you tell it to do something, it comes up with something. It reasons with itself, says, is this the best possible answer? I don't like this. Let me go look again. Here's a better one. Let me compare it to this.
That's too human-like.
It's wild. They're even talking about how AI may replace therapists, because you can create custom GPTs in ChatGPT built how you want that can be a therapist.
I would think.
I mean, I have one that I built that's like a life coach that is, and you tell it what you want it to do. And I said, I want you to be harsh, like straight to the point, kind of like a David Goggins. And so I'll literally, if I'm like, and I use it every once in a while, so I'll put something, like if I'm having like a day where I'm stuck, I'm like, hey, I'm stuck and I keep making excuses. Help me get out of this rut. They're like, are you making excuses, or are you just a lazy piece of shit? Like this is what it does. Like so it really, you can create, and it's crazy, like what it learns and what you can teach it. It's wild. I mean, just explore it, and you'll see like how it is scary what it can do, but it's also so interesting because if you know how to use it, you can do so many incredible things with it, I think.
Okay, so is AI the next thing? Like, let's say the internet reaching modern society.
Yep.
95, 96 before it started being implemented. then I would say late 2000s, MySpace, YouTube, the social media was born. Is the AI integration with that the next thing?
AI is here to stay. AI is the next internet. That's what the guy was talking about. He was saying how like teachers are trying to prevent the kids from using AI. He's like, it's not going anywhere. That's like telling kids not to use the internet.
Right. That
like,
didn't work out.
We just need to embrace it and understand like how do we teach them how to use it better and more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the truth. It's not going anywhere. I mean, just how much it's changed in the past 5 months, 6 months is unbelievable. The stuff it can do now, like it is wild. And the more you use it, the better it knows you.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can train it and give it more information about you, so it knows exactly who you are and what you're trying to do.
And that's not unsettling to you at all.
No, I mean, unsettling in what way?
I don't mean maybe on a broader, more conceptual basis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean in terms of your daily life right now is it unsettling. I'm saying the implications on a broader scale.
But here's the thing, that's with anything, right? Like anything can have broad implications.
Yeah, it goes back to the high alert thing. You either spend your time worrying about things you can control or things you cannot control.
Right, exactly. So like, there's nuclear weapons out there. Right. There's wars. I can't control that stuff. AI, if someone wants to use AI for evil, I can't control that. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. I'm going to use it while I can for the things I want to use it for.
I guess my point, though, is to take it to the next level where AI becomes a sentient existence where it isn't like any humans using it. I mean, it starts using it itself. You know, that's the.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be there soon. I wouldn't doubt that. But again, I think if you utilize it in the right way, it can make you so much better and so much more efficient at what you do. Like when you create AI agents, like they can do things for you automated. It's like crazy what this thing can do.
Right.
And just the amount of information. Now ChatGPT has a deep research function. It'll literally do research for you, like deep research on the internet, come back with citations. Like so if you were researching, say you were like writing a term paper on something, it would do all the research in a matter of probably 3 minutes.
I know.
And give you an example of it recently. It's wild, man. It's wild. And to me, that's what's exciting. Like we're living through a complete, in my mind, a technological revolution. Mm-hmm. Like there was the Industrial Revolution, right? Which we didn't live through. That changed the world. Mm-hmm. The internet definitely did too, but that wasn't, it just kind of happened over time. There wasn't like a moment where like, oh my God, the life is different.
Correct. Because the internet was technically in the late 80s where the universities started where it was interconnected.
There is a moment now where it's like the world is changing.
Because it's happening so rapidly.
It's happening so rapidly, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. And we're watching this rapidly evolve right in front of our face. It is wild.
I think about how my father looked at the internet when it started.
Yeah.
He was skeptical, like I think anyone from his generation was. And he made a decision, which I think was the wrong decision. But he made a decision right away that he was not going to incorporate that in his life. He was going to respect it, but he was going to not incorporate the internet. Mm-hmm. And I wonder now, my generation, people seeing this AI and they've incorporated the internet to a degree through their social media or their phone. They really might not be really versed in the web.
Yeah.
Are they at a point where they are going to just, I'm not going to incorporate AI. I'm not intentionally going to incorporate AI into my life. I'm just going to status quo the last 20. Well, yeah, that's my point. That's my point. Or they end up going there begrudgingly when it becomes more mainstreamed or becomes, it's like the smartphones became so easy and they proliferated in society because they were just because of jobs, user friendly.
Yeah.
It was almost idiot proof. Anyone could use it, right? That's what AI is going to have components of that too at some point in time.
I mean, look, here's what I look at it. If you're a business owner and you're not using AI in your business today, you are a year behind, and you're going to keep the gap's going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, because it makes me faster and more efficient, and then I can do things quicker that I don't have to charge clients for. Mm-hmm. So now I can add way more value to a client, right? A reviewing of an email and summarizing it that may have taken me 20 minutes in the past, I can do in 2. And then spend 3 minutes reviewing it.
Right.
And don't have to charge my client for that.
Right.
Like I can create marketing material fast. I can create brand kits. I can create webinars, one-sheeters. It at the push of a button. Put in a couple prompts and boom, it's there. Tweak it, make it mine, and use it. Like just think about like yesterday, I created a one-sheeter for our estate planning. Now, that would have taken me 2 years ago, like a half day to come up with it. Okay, let me format it. I just put in the chat GPT. Hey, here's what I want. Give me a one-sheeter, with the visual image that I can use to give to potential new clients.
And you can ask it for 10 examples and use the one you want.
Yep. In less than 15 seconds, I had a perfectly usable one that may need 5 minutes of tweaking.
Right.
That explains exactly what we do and why we do it. That's wild. Like, think about that. Now, think about if you're a marketing person, if you know how to use AI to your advantage, and you come and you work for me and you're using AI, making and pumping out content. Like, I don't give a shit if it's coming from AI or from you. If you're pumping it out that fast, I'm going to pay you to keep doing that.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it's not going to replace people if you're good at what you do and you know how to use it. But if you're, I'm just using marketing as an example. Like, if you're a marketer for a company and you're just not putting out a ton of stuff and not putting out good content, someone just use AI. You can automate AI and it'll pump out everything.
There's always an excuse not to do it now.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in any profession, you should find a way to incorporate it into what you're doing. Look at real estate, right? You're in real estate. You can use it to market for you simply. Very easy. So it's wild what it can do.
Yeah, we're definitely living in different times.
Yeah, you think? Yeah, definitely are. We definitely are.
Yeah, and again, the whole premise of my question to you initially wasn't, I'm not a doomsday or anything. I find it interesting that if you observe, like I took an inner reflection this past week, looking at my own evolvement over my life in terms of anxiety or in terms of just how I lived my day in, day out life, the best of my memory. But, when you go out socially, if you just pay attention to the demeanor of the people around you, it just feels tense to me.
Yeah.
Do you feel that?
Yeah, I think it's
not always, but I mean, there's times.
So here's what I would say too. So I agree to an extent, but it's also the recency effect, right? Like, I don't see a red sports car until I buy a red sports car. I'm not going to see anxious people until I'm anxious,
or until you see maybe or you experience 2 or 3 just by happenstance close together, and now it's on your mind. You're looking for it.
Well, yeah, because like for me, like I'm not an anxious person, right? So I don't sometimes even notice when a person's being anxious because that doesn't cross my mind.
Yeah.
So I don't even necessarily see it. Now, if I have a moment where, like, if I'm stressed out, I observe other people being stressed, and I feel other people's emotions.
That's a good point.
But if I can feel other people's emotions when they're tense. But there are certain times where, like, anxiety is one I have a hard time with because I don't think I've ever had like anxiety. So when people say I'm anxious, like I don't understand that.
Yeah,
like, that's a hard concept.
I knew that going into the conversation. I kind of figured that was the case. Yeah,
but I get that. But I can pick out other things very quickly. Like I have a tendency to sense people's emotions when they're when they're off or something's going on with them.
Yeah.
But it's kind of that recency effect, right? You don't see it until you see it, and then now you see it everywhere.
Yeah. I remember I guess it was December of 19, going into the new year, and I had a guttural feeling as I was out doing some real estate and kind of enjoying the hangover from the holidays. But something felt odd to me. And in my writing, I go back and I've read it multiple times now. In January, February of 2020, I wasn't really paying attention to the news too much. And as the pandemic started to make the news, this worldwide thing, when I read my writing, I can read multiple entries where I'm talking about the anxiety in the stores, the anxiety in the convenience market, the anxiety getting the gasoline. But I sensed it.
Okay, interesting.
Starting around in December and January, but I couldn't picture it. It was noticeable.
Interesting. Okay.
And I read that and I say, is it really different from today? I think it is. I think people are outwardly happier now than they were maybe in 2020, 2021, maybe.
I do think that is the case. I do.
But at the same time, I wonder if there's just a societal scar in the way that we maneuver and interact with each other because of that. And how long, if that's the case, how long will it take for that to go away?
Some people may never go away from it. I mean, other people, I think, that's a hard one to answer because I think everybody's different, right? Every person has a different way of looking at the world. Every person has a different way of perceiving information. You know, one person's anxiety is another person's pleasure. So it's a hard question to answer. Do I think people will eventually get over it? I do feel a shift in society. I do feel we're shifting to a more joyful society, or back towards it. Like we were just sin dipped in negative for the longest time.
Yep.
I don't feel that as much. I still feel I feel people that are looking for that are the ones that are always going to look for it, no matter what.
But society's always been that way.
Exactly. You're always going to have those people that just want to find something wrong or want to find the negative
because that's where they're comfortable,
right?
Which is a real shame, but that's the reality.
But I think that's human nature. There are certain times too where like I will complain about shit that I know I shouldn't complain about stuff.
Of course.
Like I was doing that, I complained about something today. I'm like, why am I complaining about this? This is the stupidest shit. Like, what am I doing right now? I'm wasting energy on it. But it's human nature. You just got to be, self-aware enough to know when it's happening and stop it. That's a lot of people just don't do that.
Yeah, well, that's if that was easier, then stoicism would be the law of the land.
Correct. Yes, exactly.
But it's not.
No,
that's why.
Because again, self-awareness, I think that's something that's so hard for people because people don't want to admit their own deficiencies.
Oh yeah.
Because being self-aware is being able to look in the mirror and say, I've got some issues. Like, got a lot of issues. I got to address them. Most people want to look in the mirror and say, I'm good. Like I'm confident. I'm progressing.
What's really interesting is that when you get around someone who suffers from a significant lack of self-awareness and you are in their close proximity on a daily basis, whether it's a work environment, a social thing, but you see them on a regular basis and you see what happens. It's interesting if you pay attention to the implications of the way they are on all those around them.
Yeah.
And if you really pay attention to that, you will see so many similarities. And it may be one of the most difficult things to make someone aware of is their own self-unawareness.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's the toughest conversation.
It is the hardest thing to do because you can't point out to someone you're not self-aware because they just get defensive. They're just like, well, no, I know exactly what's going on, but no, you don't, because you have some blind spots. I mean, we all have blind spots, but that is a hard thing to do.
Organizationally damaging to
it is
incredibly damaging.
Well, and because I think it comes down to, so if you look at a person that's, they have to be ready to understand that and receive that. They have to be ready for the feedback. They have to be ready.
But are they ever?
Yeah, I think people can be.
Okay.
Because here's the way I look at it. When I always say, the older I get, the more I know I don't know. So the more I want to improve. So I am more willing now than I probably was 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Because like back then I thought I knew everything. Like I got it all figured out. It's like I need help with. Now it's, you get humbled as you get older.
No question.
And you realize that there's a lot of stuff I just don't know. I want to keep progressing and learning. So there's no destination for me. It's the journey. That's what makes you better.
Yeah, but yes. But I think that high alert, that living in high alert status is so directly connected to those with no self-awareness. It's like they're interchangeable to me.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that. So again, I think it's high alert with the lack of self-awareness, lack of self-confidence. I think that's a big thing too, right? They're on high alert because they're just constantly worried about like what could possibly happen because they're not confident in their ability to navigate through what would happen.
1,000,000%. And it's dangerous when you have someone in a management position.
Yeah.
That it exhibits this kind of insecurity.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, so again, as you know, my circumstances in life have changed, and I never was a part of an organization for 25 odd years. And now I'm doing this. I still have my entrepreneurial venture, but I also have this organizational interaction, and it's just interesting now to be able to examine different people.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
Oh, trust me.
And how the interplay is between the organizational structure.
Oh yeah,
it's. I mean,
when I was in corporate America, I could always spot the person that lacked the confidence, because they were always the one that were trying to be the loudest in the room. They tried to control the conversation.
The control's a big one.
Control or get noticed. It was a get noticed thing, right?
Or no one can do it better than me.
Yes.
So I have to do it. I have to have an input. I have to have the final word.
Yeah.
I have to have the final say.
I remember there was a guy I worked with that it was like I learned how to navigate him at a young age, because he was always the type of guy that no matter what you said, he would oppose it. Just because he wanted to be the guy he wanted to be the guy to be that guy to get, so everybody knew that he was recognized for that. So it was just, then I would just almost always say the opposite of what I wanted. And then I'd be like, then I just agree with them. Like, that's a really good idea. We should do that. So it's like, hey, we want to do this transaction. Now I see it this way. And I know if I say it that way, he's going to say it this way.
Yeah,
so I would just say it this way.
You just figured him out.
And they'd be like, "Oh no, I think we should." I'm like, "Actually, yeah, that's it." And it was
reverse psychology.
I did, but it was, and I was fortunate to learn it at a young age. But it was one of those things where, like, no matter, because I would test him, like, why is this dude, like, literally, I could say it's up, and he'd be like, "No, it's down." I'm like, what is happening? And then it was just I learned more about the guy, and it's like, okay, like, you want to be the one that's making the decisions. You want to be calling the shots. I'm just trying to get the shit done. Yeah. Let me just flip it. Let me just say the opposite.
Those type of folks are like throwing sand into gears, man. It just really is just.
It's hard. It was hard.
It works against fluidity, good work fluidity.
So that's a good point. Like, because the one guy I'm thinking of in particular, this was probably halfway through my time there, and he was one of the managers that got swapped out eventually. But there was so much friction that year, and it was a year where, like, the company was growing, but it was just every meeting felt like friction. Like, why is this? Like, what is going on? And it really boiled down that he was trying to assert himself.
Of course,
like, I've got to show that I matter, and I'm just going to push back on everybody. It was not just me; it was the CFO. The head of sales. Like, it was just a constant pushback.
And that shows a lot of situational unawareness.
100%. 100%. I'm just like, what is happening? And that's why I think I was fortunate to have that position for as long as I did, because I learned a lot because I dealt with all different countries, all different, people from different parts of the world. So they all have different personalities. I learned to navigate people and pick up on things like that. And it was just an interesting time. I could probably write a book on the shit I saw over the years, but it was truly a test of people observation. Like, I learned how to really observe people. Because I would just listen and watch and say, okay, what is motivating?
It's fascinating. I actually, the funny part about this whole thing is the thing I think I've missed the most about not being in an organization is the observational entertainment. For lack of a better phrase.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe in the 90s, my worldview was different.
Yeah.
So maybe it wasn't as entertaining then, maybe a little more frustrating.
Yeah.
But now, it's just, but to see and watch the interplay and play chess mentally as opposed to checkers.
Oh yeah.
And think about the implications of these very self-aware, unaware decisions and how they're affecting other people and ultimately how it spreads. It's really destructive, and I can just be more. I think I can be more critical in my older age because I can just see it more clearly.
Yeah, and it is a game. It is like playing chess, because you really do need to, and that's why I observe people.
But it's so stupid, and if you step back from and look at it, it's just so unproductive and so stupid.
It is. It is to an extent, but I think it does help in my profession. That's a big part of what I have to do. I have to be able to understand the tactic. I have to be able to understand people, right?
Right.
Because like I say, we don't sell legal. We sell peace of mind. I sell peace of mind and trust.
Correct.
The vehicle to sell that is the legal services. So I have to make sure I'm giving these clients peace of mind and they trust me.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that? By understanding them. I have to understand the person to understand what gives that person peace of mind.
Right.
So that's why I love the being able to observe people, because it's given me, I don't say a leg up, but it kind of has. Like I've had a deeper understanding of people because I listen, I watch. Like that's the thing. Like I always joke everybody in my office, like, I feel like they just think I don't see anything. Like I see everything. Most of the shit doesn't bother me, you know. But it's like I know everything that's going on. I know what's happening. It's just none of it really bothers me.
Yeah.
I try and be very aware, and you just start watching. And you watch people, and you watch what motivates them, how they move, why they move the way they do, why they say certain words, why they do certain things in certain situations. And I like to do it because it's almost like I'm testing myself, playing a game with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I go in and say, okay, this is the impression I have of what's going on. Then I see if I can validate it. And it's fun. It's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, because at that moment you have a level of detachment from it.
Yeah. Yes.
So the nonsense that comes out of there, you don't really ever take it personally, and you can actually set it aside.
Yes. That's exactly right.
But that is such a tactic, and I'm not great at that. That is a very good emotional tactic.
Yeah,
if you can implement that.
Yeah, it comes over time, definitely, but it's something I try and do on a regular basis. Just sit back and listen and just watch and understand.
So I'll share this with you. So the first 3 months ish of last year, when I started working with the organization, and just learning, play nice with others.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, I naturally, I'm being facetious, but ultimately learning how to work with an organization.
Mm-hmm.
When you're not doing it for 25 years, you got to reintegrate yourself.
Yep.
And some of the nonsense that I saw was just so second grade to me. And so, but after a couple of months of what are you getting emotionally involved in this? Step back, look at it for what it is.
So you got to do.
The moment it was like a light bulb turn, like, whoa, wait, this is the sophisticated way to maneuver here.
Yeah.
And then I just picked my shots because they open you now can see them.
Exactly.
You're not emotionally attached to it.
But that is the essence of it. The moment you can emotionally detach from a situation, you see it so much more clearly.
Correct.
You can just, and that's the thing. If I can emotionally detach from a situation, I can walk in the room and see exactly what's going on.
Correct.
And who's thinking what, and who's just watching how you're sitting. Are your arms crossed? Are your legs crossed?
Do you think most people can do that if they were able to find a way to emotionally detach?
I think it's a learned art form. I don't think it's a natural ability people have. I think because observation is such a mentally grueling thing.
Correct.
Because if I'm like observing people to learn, like I'm watching how your mouth moves, how your eyes move, the way you tilt your head, the way your shoulders are sitting,
modeling,
your hands, your feet, the way your voice is fluctuating. Is it shaky? Is it flat? Is it pitched? Like these are things that my brain, I'm subconsciously or unconsciously just picking up while I'm still listening to the words they're saying.
Correct.
And then my brain is in the background, like putting all this data together to now in that first 30 seconds, this is what I believe the person is.
Yeah.
Then I get that information, then I start testing it.
You made the assessment, right?
I make the assessment. That's literally how my brain works. If I'm meeting a new person in a situation, those first 30 seconds, I feel like there's probably like if my brain looked like a carnival inside, like a bunch of people just doing a bunch of random shit. So it's watching all these different pieces, right? At the end of that 30 seconds, I'm like, okay, this is what I believe the person is and what motivates them. Then I start testing that throughout that conversation.
How often is those first 30 seconds wrong? How often do you find out that if you had to put a percentage on it?
Very rarely, honestly. I mean, the older I've gotten, the more accurate it's become.
I bet.
But probably like when I first started, maybe 50-50. Now it's probably less than 5% of the time. Maybe even less than that. I can't remember the last time that I was completely wrong when I had that first assessment.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever met somebody in business that you ended up having a working relationship with? It was so on to that you may have had them wrong in the beginning. Have you ever met, let me ask you this question, conversationally, meeting new people in business, have you ever met your match in that particular tactic?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've met people that I've seen do that or have talked to me about doing that. Um, I've never said let's go toe to toe and see who do it better.
No, but correct me if I'm wrong. If someone is skilled at doing exactly that assessment and then conversationally modeling, and that whole, because I'm always confused in that the way I was taught, it was part of NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and modeling. It came, it came right out of, for me, it came right out of the 80s. And I thought it was just too robotic. But the way I was taught it, it never seemed authentic or genuine. It was almost like a game. It was almost like a play. A play. At what point do you feel like, when you're in that mode, that you stay within yourself, you stay authentic? It isn't a game, it's really you. Do you feel that there's anything unauthentic or disingenuous about the idea of modeling and communication?
So that's a great question. I don't typically model people. Like I'm not going to change the way I operate with a person based. Like I'm not going to sit there and do the mirroring like that. Like I
do a little bit of it,
but
maybe unconsciously.
Unconsciously, I'm not intentionally doing it.
Okay.
I look at it more like I try and compliment the person. Like I won't won't mirror them.
I get it.
I will kind of understand.
I know exactly where you're referring to.
Yeah. That's more, and that's
taught too. That's a lesson.
But it's me being authentic, because I always look at like, who am I? Like I like to solve problems for people. Right. I want them to trust me and know that I'm going to give them peace of mind. I'm not going to be exactly like them, because that wouldn't make sense. I'm a compliment to them. I can solve the problems they can't. So that's kind of how I always operate. And when I'm assessing a person,
that's good.
I just watch them. I don't have to mirror them to assess them, right? I don't typically have to mirror somebody to get them to do what I think needs done. I just authentically tell them, like, this is the shit that needs done, and here's why. And it's, but the assessment I start with is I understand their pain points and what's really underlying the issues. So then I talk to that.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not about saying, oh, this is the problem I have. It's like, you have the problem because you're thinking of this other thing that's underlying.
Yeah, that's only half the question.
That's
only half the question. Right.
Exactly. You got to get to the underlying issue.
Correct.
And you do that, that's a change in the game.
And what you just described so succinctly, is that a word? Succinctly. We'll
go with that.
That was kind of what was missing in what I was getting out of NLP.
Yeah.
It was that next question.
Which
leads to the solution. So if I have the solution, I can actually ease it in there. Literally, like you said, while they're still expressing the discontentment and pain they have.
Exactly right. Because look, you can mirror a person all you want, but if you're not asking the right questions,
because a straight mirror is cold.
Correct. Exactly. So if you know how to ask the right questions and understand what's actually going on, and that's why I watch a person. When they're telling me the problem, I see, okay, when did they winced when they said that word, or their eyes made a certain movement when they said something, or they they covered up when they started telling me something. It's like there's something they're not telling me. So I'll watch a person as they're telling me a story, and if I see them kind of go like this and start telling me more of the story, they're hiding something.
Correct.
99% of the time, that's an absolute fact. I just have to know how to ask the questions that it did not. They don't seem like I'm prying.
Correct.
I'm just trying to understand. Then you start seeing them
disarming.
Like you disarm them, right? And then the stuff comes out. And that's what you got to do.
Yeah. 100%. But it's always got to be delivered with authenticity.
Absolutely. You can't fake that.
No. And and that's where you see the misapplication of NLP and the modeling theory, because it can be done in such a cold and manipulative even when the intent initially is just pure manipulation to get what I want.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what salespeople, not all salespeople. That's a very that was, I would say, in the 70s and 80s, a very popular method of high aggressive sales.
Yeah,
which I think we as human beings have tamed down over the years, is not the best way.
Yeah, but I think sales has been taught. A lot of these sales trainers just don't. I mean, they teach a lot of good
Sure.
techniques, but they should start with it has to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
I can teach all these techniques all you want, but if it's not authentically you, I'll see right through it.
Correct.
Like I watch when people try and mirror me, and it's hilarious. It is hilarious. I'm like, like, and I will if someone trying to sell me something, like say I meet like a financial advisor or an insurance person, like at a networking event, and they're trying, and I see them start in the mirror, I will literally change the way I move.
I know.
Just to
I saw
see.
you.
Just to see.
I've seen you do this.
It's
in
hilarious. I
groups
love
of
it.
2 or 3 at mixers. I've watched you do it. I've watched you do it.
Because I just want to see, like, it's almost like I'm testing my skills. Is this person mirroring me? Then I'll just start doing.
It's
like,
just funny because the one time I'm not going to disclose names here,
Yeah.
but the one time that I saw you do it, you started mirroring in the most unnatural Rocco Cozza.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not a person that ever leans on one side of the leg or the other.
Yeah.
You don't stand that way.
Yeah,
but
right.
you did.
Yeah.
And I'm going, this is something's going. And then I picked
Yeah.
up on it. Oh my God, he's actually he's giving it right back to him.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'll do. And I'll watch the person and see, because I want to just see, like, it's almost like I'm testing my own instincts. Because I want to make sure my instincts are still sharp. Like I'm not losing my edge. Like I want to be able to spot that quick, and I can usually spot it pretty quick. And then when I say, okay, I sense it, then I'll just do something uncharacteristic, like I'll just lean, or I'll go like this, or I'll typically stand like this. Like I'm not a person to typically stands my arms.
You're never bundled together.
No, but I'll do that. I'll just go and I'll talk like this.
Yeah, I remember. Oh my God, I know exactly where we were. It was you go like this. You're going like this. I'm like,
yeah,
and it's hard for you to get your arms around.
Yeah,
where you're built, and then it's like you're going like this. I'm going.
Yeah.
Is he cold?
And I'm never cold. I'm always sweating. I'm hot in here right now. I mean,
yeah.
But that's just part of, you have to be. It all boils down to truly just being authentic.
And
Life
seasoned
really
business
easy.
people, successful seasoned people,
Mm-hmm.
they get there. It isn't an accident they get there.
Yeah,
they've been through these maneuvers. They've been through, and for you to come in and be disingenuous about your delivery, to me, it's just crazy.
I'd rather someone say like, "Hey, dude, like, look, I'm new. I'm gonna try and sell you,"
but that's
like,
genuine.
And I'd be like, "I get it, man. I was there. Like, pitch me. Let me hear what you got."
Right.
Instead of like trying to pull the, "Oh, so and so told me to give you a call," and I'm like, I haven't talked to that person for years. I have no idea who you're talking about. And then they'll start trying to mirror me and use words I use. I'm like, just tell me you're a new person. They gave you a script. You're trying to sell me. I'd more than likely give you a shot of getting my business doing that than trying to do these techniques.
Oh yeah.
Because it's not authentic for you yet. Maybe it'll get to that point where you practice enough and it becomes who you are.
Yeah.
Or you make it authentic to you. Then it may work. But right now it's just awkward.
Yes. And it probably isn't awkward to everybody because you have to be someone who understands what's happening to you.
Correct. That's exactly right. Yes.
You know,
100%.
and it's
yep, exactly, man.
Good stuff, my man.
It was fun. Always.
Yeah, never know where we're gonna end up.
No, we got here somehow.
All right, next week.
Yep, I'll be here.
Thank you. That was 71.